Hello and welcome to SMA Talks, the podcast. My name is Ayodiji Saraki, and I'm really excited. I'm excited to be back to have this podcast with y'all. To my avid listeners over time, thank you very much for being patient with me, for your understanding, and for sticking with SMA Talks, the podcast. Today's topic is going to be titled Africa, Youth, and Society. Believe you me, I have the perfect guest to discuss this topic with. Is none other than my friend, my brother, my colleague. His name is Abdulmumin Edidi. Now, in case you don't know, Abdulmumin is a civil engineer, a youth and community development advocate, is a research and policy development expert with major focus on youth political inclusion. In the year 2019, he was awarded Outstanding Youth of the Year by Ideal Youth in Lagos. And just recently, in 2021, he was listed as one of the most influential youth in Lagos by the Lagos State Youth Parliament. Currently, he is a nominee to the Nigerian Youth Parliament representing Lagos Central Senatorial District. Wow, only one man. So this shows you that my guest is more than qualified to discuss this topic. So, ADD Abdulmumin, please tell me, how's this been for you so far?
Yeah, that's very dear to my heart because it's a major role for me to take the issues that bother young persons in Lagos Central Senatorial District from Etiosa to Lagos Island, Apapa, Surulere, Lagos Mainland, to the national front. We have our national representatives, but then these people do not really speak up the issues that concerns the youth. They just speak on general issues. So for us, it's an opportunity to project the issues that affect the young people at this constituency to the national front.
True. I hope and pray that you guys, you and your other colleagues at the Nigerian Youth Parliament, are able to do quite a bit for the Nigerian youth and young people across the country.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So today's topic is going to be Africa, Youth, and Society. You of all people know that the number of youth population in Africa, we have more than enough. According to African Development Bank statistics, Africa has nearly half a billion youth aged 15 to 35 years, and 1/3 are unemployed and even discouraged. Then another third are vulnerable employed, and only 1 in 6 is in wage employment. So if we hear such statistics, it's heartbreaking that we have half a billion youth on this continent, Africa, and most of them are unemployed. The ones that are employed are the wage is not enough, and most of them are even vulnerable to hunger, to insecurity, insurgents, for example, like in the case of Nigeria, what is happening in Ethiopia, what's happening in several other African countries. So what do you think? Do you think the government, the African leaders so far are trying their best for the youth? What do you think the African leaders are doing, in your view, to help alleviate the insecurity and the unemployment in Africa?
Well, Deji, you see, the issue is that first I need to talk about who are these leaders. Do you refer to the political leaders, the traditional leaders, the religious leaders, or the economic leaders, like the business leaders? We need to clearly understand this. So not any one of them is exempted from this issue. So if you are looking at it from the political leaders' perspective, I think we may not be able to really get to the root of the matter. But definitely they are not doing enough. They are not doing enough. They are not being proactive. They are not being deliberate. I don't know how exactly is best to describe the African leaders, but there's a joke that we make sometimes that, all African leaders belong to the same WhatsApp group, so they just do the same thing.
Yeah.
But it's really sad. 500 million youth on the continent, that's like a gunpowder, sitting on a gunpowder.
Exactly.
I
know the beautiful phrase that we use: youth are the future of tomorrow. Why would you call some set of people future of tomorrow when you have not empowered them for what tomorrow will be? You have to give them the tools. You have to give them the right training, education. You have to create a system of fairness and justice that they understand right from wrong properly. So if that's the kind of future we desire, we want a good Africa, we want a good future. It's so ironical. So why are we not doing what we need to do? And the most annoying thing, we know what to do to empower this youth, and we are not doing that.
You see, one of the issues we have in Africa is that we have not explored our indigenous potentials and talents. Because of our history of colonization, most times when the world is moving on very quickly, we tend to pay more attention in resolving some of the issues that the colonialists have brought upon us. Therefore, we struggle to catch up with the rest of the world. Exactly. It's a very serious issue.
Exactly.
Because the colonialists have sort of taken away all the things that are indigenous to us. Africa as a continent we are full of tribes.
Yes,
so
tribal.
It's just who we are. We are tribal people, and then we go by that. I don't think that should be an issue for us.
Yeah, I don't think there's an issue because, according to Professor Lumumba, for example, he argued beautifully when he said Africans know how to handle their tribes properly.
Yes.
When you look at the continent Africa, and if you even want to zoom properly and look at Nigeria, for example, we have all sorts of tribes and we cohabit perfectly. So if you go to the typical European country, for example, Norway typically comprises of Norwegians.
Yes.
Finland is full of Finnish people, English people, Poland, Polish people, German. And why did that happen? Because they also have tribes, and you see some country as tiny as just one of our small communities here, do you understand, called a country in Europe, because they can't cohabit with one another. But at least Africa has been able to be forward thinking and be more diverse. So we have been able to handle diversity well, when it comes to that.
Yeah, so it's because we have tribes within a nation. So all the tribes come together to form a nation, which is a good thing. So the issue of young people in Africa is really disheartening. There are lots of policies. Policies are not a problem that we have on the continent. It's just deliberate actions to put in place these things and make them work. So 500 million young people. Exactly. It's never a curse. It's a blessing waiting to be harnessed. Because for every one of these young persons that jackpot in quotes and move to Europe or move to Asia, to America, they become a blessing to those people.
Yeah. So I wanted to even touch on that. Thank God you brought us the jackpot. So for those of you listening, jackpot is a term used in Nigeria currently to seek a better life, more like to leave the country and seek for prosperity somewhere else. So to leave. So you hear slang like, "Mama, I want jackpot," or "When you did jackpot, when are you leaving?" So, many young people. I have quite a number of friends that have jackpots. They have left to several countries, North America, Europe, and the likes. And you see that they're doing beautifully well in terms of whatever job they are doing. Because here, those communities, for example, have had some form of structure. They have well working institution that they have been able to build over time. So, for example, there's more, let's say, fairness compared to Africa in terms of the job market. So, because of that, they have more access to jobs and resources and gadgets to properly learn, train, equipment, and all of those things. Thereafter, staying back over there, developing the country, the so-called white man's country. And before now, usually when you hear, we didn't have a term for that. We didn't call it Jakba. You see people leaving the country, Africans leaving the African continent to go and learn and come back to Africa, come back to whatever country they're from, to bring their expertise, whatever they have learned, to work together in their country and develop it forward. But now that the case is different, people go and their intention is to run away completely. What do you think about that dynamism? What do you think about that? Because when you leave and you're not trying to come back to contribute your expertise into your community that you left behind, some form of volunteering, mentorship, even getting involved in innovation, creating things. I mean, someone put it well when the person said, where we have more problems is where there are greater solutions, is where there's more money to be made. So the irony, young Africans are leaving Africa. White rich men are coming to Africa to come and exploit because they know that this is where the money is. So how can we see the potential in Africa as young people? How do you think we can see that?
Well, the thing is, so when the colonialists came and then left, we were taught something called transfer technology or transfer innovation, whereby you don't have to look at what is peculiar to you and your community. Instead, you just go abroad, you learn, and then you go import that knowledge directly. Even though that is good in terms of sharing of intelligence, sharing of ideas across the globe, we also need to look inwards for our own indigenous solutions to our problems. Yes. So the problem then was that when a lot of people went overseas to learn, to get educated, and then they came back to Africa, a larger part of Africa, they were not appreciated. The ideas were not appreciated. They felt, I have so much more to offer, but the environment is not like conducive enough.
Yeah.
So then they be like, but these people over there sort of cherish the ideas that they've learned from them, and then the one they brought from Africa. Do you understand? So they tend to want to retain them in those places. I've heard series of stories about Africans that are not even allowed to come back home because the people in the West particularly feel, if this person gets to go back home, we are going to lose a lot. We're going to lose an expert and all of those things. So we just have to make our environment conducive. We have to make it conducive for young persons to grow, to explore their ingenuity, and then develop solutions that are peculiar to our problems on our soil.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. Well said. So let's look at society, for example. Now, we are approaching, for example, in Nigeria, we're approaching the 2023 general elections. And Nigeria has more youth population than aging or aged population. And this election is going to be in 2023. Do you think, in your view, young Africans are ready to really change the society? Because I often say that the truth is, whether we like it or not, we're in a democratic system. And in a democratic system, democracy works. that's what you have chosen as a nation to adopt. And the only way you can change a government is through your votes, your participation, using your PVCs to go to the polling unit and vote. So do you think young Africans are ready to use their energy, their capability? This is not just, doing activism. This is about actionable, something actionable, stepping out, going to the ballot. So how do you think African youth can galvanize, now looking at Nigerian youth as an example, can galvanize themselves properly? Because we are both youth too, So how do you think we can galvanize ourselves properly and make sure that 2023 comes, we have progress, we have better, not just better candidates to present in political parties, but we're able to influence change with our PVCs?
Thank you, Deji. So let me have a flashback. Some months ago, I was on call with some young African leaders who are mostly aspirants in their respective countries. We belong to the same platform called Common Futures Conversations Forum, an offshoot of the Chatham House London as an institution. It's one of the programs of Chatham House London. And we were all talking about political inclusion. We had someone from South Africa, from Malawi, from Kenya, and from Nigeria, and I think one other country. We were all talking about the obstacles for young political persons in these countries. And we all came to a single conclusion. What is the mindset of the voter? So it's not about, young persons contesting. A lot of young persons try to contest elections, they get the platform to contest, but then they hardly get the votes. So this brings me to the fact that Africans and young people generally are not homogeneous. Let me be specific to Africa. So we are not homogeneous.
Yes.
We have different experiences, we have different needs, we have different
wants
and all those things.
Different way we view the world.
Yes, that actually sum up our approach to things. So take for instance in Nigeria, someone in the far north would not see things the same way someone in the south would see things. So we would always have clashes. Rather than we having clashes, let's just understand and focus on our community, knowing that we are not in another community, we do not know what they experience. Let's just focus on what is peculiar to our community, even though we know there are things that nationally bind us together.
Sure.
So when we take the ones that are peculiar to us, we now look at what binds us together. Then when we want to talk at a national level, we focus more on what binds us together.
Yes.
Right? So as far as the 2023 election is concerned, as a researcher now, I can tell you that young persons say they have apathy in politics. But we are not asking ourselves, what exactly are the means of political participation? You see, for every political news or news you share about political leaders online, you are participating in politics. So you need to watch what you share online.
True, absolutely.
Because if you share divisive comment, it's going to be that way. You're going to keep dividing everybody. If you share things that are authentic, verified news, you are also helping the system. It doesn't have to be for or against the leaders. It doesn't matter. But just make sure whatever you're sharing is the truth. Even though it's the truth, the way you share it also goes a long way. So that's on one part. We are talking about politics here, Deji. There are so many countries where people cannot talk about politics. I can tell you that for free.
Sure.
If you go to African homes, Nigerian homes, you find people able to talk about politics freely, without any obstruction. It's a means of political participation because you're building political awareness. You're sharing political ideas.
But how do we take more responsibility? So, for example, now there's a fundamental nationalist mindset that we should have as Nigerian. We should be loyal and respect the idea and the country called Nigeria. Which part of doing that is voting, is participating in politics. You can't change something you're not part of. You understand? You can't be on the outside. It is not we versus them. You know, we are all Nigerians. I mean, that's one of my brother's favorite lines. You know, it is not you against us. We are together in this. So both the so-called politicians and the so-called African youth are all Nigerians. So how do young people now get involved and stop seeing the politics and leadership and participation as it is their thing? Do it. We're always waiting for, it's almost like young people are waiting for a disaster to happen and say, oh, I knew it, I said it, this is what will happen, this is what they did. You know, always the negatives. How do we be part of the process and get involved? Because I strongly believe that nobody's going to fully give you a table. Nobody's going to say, oh yeah, just come and sit down. And, you know, nobody's going to tell you that. You have to take yourself in. How do you strategically take yourself in? You know, how do we get this mindset change? Because I believe you are a very perfect person for this topic. I mean, because as one of the nominee for the Nigerian Youth Parliament, I know that the tenure lasts for about 2 years, right? So I believe that's enough time for you young people now in the Nigerian Youth Parliament, because you're from all over the 36 states of the federation, which shows you we run a federation. How do we ensure that young people are really part of the process? Participate.
Okay, so I'll still continue from what I was saying about the processes of participation. I spoke about posting online, like political information. I talked about talking about politics in the homes. Now, campaigning for political parties or politicians is a means of participation, because for every time you throw your weight behind a certain person, it means you're forming a team with that person. So it's one thing for that person to then bring you on board later on, which happens most of the time, be it committee, be it an appointment, is a means of participation. Now, coming to the real deal, which is the popular one, contesting for elections and also voting. How many young persons vote in Nigeria? Young persons hardly vote in Nigeria, you know.
And that's a problem.
We hardly vote in Nigeria, even though we are the ones who hold the power to determine the future, which I'm using this opportunity to call on young persons to say the power belongs to you in 2023. Use it wisely, you know. Young persons are not voting. Quote unquote, people say young persons have lost interest, they've lost trust in the process. Whenever people tell you do not give up, be resilient, keep going, it doesn't refer to just your career, it also refers to bring you the change you want to see. So if young persons go out in 2023 to vote and they feel, oh, they were not able to get their choice to power, because like I said, young persons are not homogeneous. A part of the young persons are voting for this person, another part is voting for this person. Make sure you don't give up. The next election, go back to that polling unit, spread your ideas further, you know, then return to the polling unit, vote, ensure that you count your votes. Keep doing that, even if you do that 5 times. The fact that you keep doing that means that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Let me also add that being a youth is not an heritage. It's not is not an entitlement. It's a phase most human beings will pass through in life. So the young person of say 20, 25, 26 today, in the next 10 years is no longer a young person, you know, according to the policies that we have. Even though you may be youthful, but you are not necessarily a youth. So it means that whatever you need to do now, do it and move on. Then let's make sure that the next set of young persons that are emerging and coming on board also sustain that spirit, that not dying spirit, that desire for change. Because what we've seen in Nigeria most times is when our parents, they lost hope after the June 12, there was a lot of apathy, which we are now trying to overcome. There are situations where you want to go.
For the listeners, what do you mean by June 12th? So just quickly briefly.
Yeah, June 12th is one that goes down in the history of Nigeria as a time when Nigerians came out to vote for the true president, which we all believed in, which was Chief MKO Abiola, in 1993. And then the election was annulled by the then military government led by General Ibrahim Babangida. So it's one that goes down in the history of Nigeria. So in overcoming that apathy, we just need to be conscious, participate consciously. When you talk about the Nigerian Youth Parliament, the National Youth Council of Nigeria, you see, those are instruments of political inclusion. I'm talking as a researcher now again. Those are instruments of political inclusion. You have National Association of Nigerian Students, you have National Union of Enugu Students. I don't know if that is what it's called. I know we have National Union of Lagos State Students. Even in Lagos, each local government, each community has its own student association, for which gives them a front to interface with their representative. So if you walk up to your representative and you tell them, "Oh, I'm the president, I'm a member of National Union of Lagos Island Students," is a sub of the general one.
Exactly.
They give you audience. When that leader in that constituency wants to make a decision, it sends that association an invitation to the table. So what do young people bring to the table? A lot of us just want personal things. We do not bring the issues that concerns all of us to the table most of the time. We just want national things. And then even the leaders that are not ready to work in the first place, once they see that you are ready to compromise, they just ride on that. And then in the end, it's what they want.
I like you took us there. So I think it would be nice to end on that issue of corruption. Mm-hmm. So I would like you to listen to what Professor Lumumba said when he was being asked. Just listen.
Listen, we have to always say the youths are the leaders of tomorrow. What is the impression? What kind of impression do you get about young people's approach to fighting corruption?
There was a time when I believed naively, of course, that the next generation is a generation that will be slightly better than our generation. But I'm quite clear in my mind that holding all factors constant, the younger generation is, in my view, even more dangerous to Africa.
Oh dear.
Because they have learned from the older generation. Remember the age-old saying that when mother cow is chewing cud, baby cow, namely the calf, is watching very keenly. The next generation of Africans is waiting for the opportunity to be thieves. And a recent survey in Kenya demonstrated that over 40% of young people think that there is nothing wrong with corruption. The only thing that they think is wrong is to be arrested, and that the only thing that you must do is to avoid being arrested. And I'm quite certain that if a survey were to be conducted in Nigeria, many young Nigerians would love to be in the situation where they can steal. So that people condemn corruption sometimes not because they hate it, but because they themselves don't have the opportunity to be corrupt.
Those were strong words there from Professor Lumumba. So today, what do you think about what he said?
Well, he is correct. He is correct considering every available evidence to us. So I'd like to refer to a Chatham House report compiled by Dr. Hoffman and Dr. Patel. This was about corruption in Nigeria from the norms perspective. So in summary, it says that it's not that Nigerians do not know that corruption is bad, we just do not know the effect it has on us. And then sometimes
I trust Nigerians they are feeling it, but still
we keep doing
it. So it's true.
So for young persons, it's because we did not meet a system that works on our arrival at birth. So we just find a system where everybody is trying to navigate.
But is that not why I was speaking on the responsibility? Where do we take responsibility for our own actions and say, I'm a party to this problem? Where do we see ourselves that you too, you're a problem because you are aiding and abetting this corrupt practice, injustices that is happening, social instability, fraud, and all of those things. So where do we see that I am part of the problem, and for us to solve this problem, we all need to change. We all need to have a different mindset. Where do we see that? Because it's just, like I said, we versus them. We blame other people. So when the roads are bad, for example, or the rails, we don't have rails, we say, oh, they have come to spoil the rails again. Who are they? They are young people like you and I that went to do those things. So where do we take responsibility as youth?
You see, it takes conscious effort to take responsibility. There is no single way to do this. We all, as young persons that are forward thinking, we just have to keep echoing this to our colleagues, to our fellow young Nigerians, that we are all responsible for whatever this country becomes, regardless of what the people in the past have done. It's never too late to redirect, to take a new step, So it starts from the home, if you care to know. It starts from the home, because even these leaders we have, they all first come from the community. They didn't drop from heaven, So they come from the community, and then we have to take conscious effort. Let me refer back to what I said earlier when I said that we need to begin to look at what is peculiar to us as a community, because we have over 300 tribes in Nigeria, different communities which have different beliefs and therefore different expectations, different realities. Let's all first from the microcosm, that the smaller community, focus on what is peculiar to you. Don't be looking at what is happening in Kaduna from Lagos and say, oh, Nigeria is this. Look at what is happening in Lagos to Lagosians, and look at and conclude that, oh, this is the reality of Lagosians.
Peculiarity. Focus on peculiar problems, peculiar solutions.
Yes, exactly. Because if you're looking at what is happening in Kaduna and then you are thinking it's affecting you in Lagos, you will keep boiling, you will keep getting unnecessarily angry, and then the hatred comes in, and then you always want to override the people of Kaduna, the people of Port Harcourt, the people of Asaba, all those things. But when you are sure of what is peculiar to you, you are able to quickly mobilize to tackle that issue. The people in Kaduna see what is peculiar to them. They are quickly able to tackle that issue without trading blames and saying, oh, the people in Kaduna are responsible for the crisis in Lagos, which is two different realities.
And then we'll bring religion into it.
And then we begin to
bring tribes into it, ethnicity, class,
and
all modes of oppression,
all
things that divide us.
Exactly. So we begin to forget the real issues, and we begin to look at people who are naturally different. So when we look at those issues that are peculiar to our communities, then we now discover the ones that are similar to us across the federation, nationally, and then we begin to address those. So let me quickly include this on a final note by saying that I know my leaders. My leaders do not necessarily become your leaders. If I am going to count my leaders, I will start by mentioning my counselor. Not even my counselor, the chairman of my CDA. It's that organized. Surprisingly, our leadership system is that organized. It's just citizenship participation that we need. So when I want to count my leaders, I start from my counselor, the chairman of my local government, my House of Assembly member, my House of Representative member, my senator, my governor, then the president that binds us all together.
Even your legislators.
Yeah. So before I get to the president that binds us all together, you will find out that most of my problems must have been solved along the line when I explore these other leaders. And then the president has just very little to do, basically. It's just like a face of the nation, and then, but because of our history, there seems to be a sort of need for restructuring of some things. But the major restructuring we need is the restructuring of our minds.
What a beautiful way to put an end to it. So the restructuring we need is the restructuring of our mind.
Yes.
So I hope and pray that we get to that point, and it's not just by prayer, we have to be actionable. Enough of talking. I'm actually tired of talking, even if I'm running a podcast. I want action. Abdulmumin Edidi, we have been speaking to Abdulmumin Edidi. It's been lovely speaking to you as a friend, as a colleague. It's always nice to get your insight, and talk to you on such issues like this. So what are we looking forward to? Anything you're doing that we should know, that we should follow?
Well, just tomorrow I'm going to be hosting an event to mobilize young persons for political participation. Then also I'm the lead of the planning committee of the African Future Leaders Summit, which is coming up at the end of this month. And so there's a lot of things lined up in terms of.
I trust you. You're always busy, and so I'll share your handle to a lot of our listeners. I know they would love to catch up with you. And African youth, you have heard it. You've heard it from myself. You've heard it from Abdulmumin Edidi, who is currently a nominee to the Nigerian Youth Parliament representing Lagos Central Senatorial District here in Nigeria, which is in Africa, obviously. And on that note, I say bye for now. Let's see you at work.